This is a video about chess tactics. First, I will tell you what a chess tactic is. Then, I will show you 3 very common chess tactics that are used in many games. In each tactic, I will also show you a few examples. Enjoy. So what is a chess tactic? Well, in chess, a tactic is a sequence of moves that will limit the opponent's options, and usually it will result in a really obvious gain and make your position on the board a lot better. These are very powerful in chess and are the building blocks to having a successful game. So, let me show you 3 very common tactics. A fork is when you move one piece and you attack 2 of your opponent's pieces at the same time. This means that your opponent can only save one piece by moving the other one to safety. Let me show you an example. If I move my rook to this square, I attack both of these pieces right here, and so my opponent can only move one of the pieces out of way, and I can grab the other one. Or if my opponent moves the knight, I can grab the other one. This type of fork is a relative fork because none of the pieces are a king. So I'm not threatening, so the king does not have to move. However, there's an absolute fork where one of the pieces is a king, and I'll show you that in the third example. Let's move on to the second example. Here, I do a similar fork, only with a bishop. After I capture this pawn here, I'm attacking both of these rooks, and my opponent can move this rook to safety, but I can grab the second one. Or if my opponent moved this rook to safety, I'd be able to grab this other one. Like I said, this fork is called an absolute fork because I move one piece and I attack a king and a queen. By doing this, I guarantee myself to get the other piece that's not the king. So after the king moves, I grab the other piece. Now let's move on to the next tactic. The next tactic is called a pin. A pin is when you move a piece and therefore block or remove the ability for another piece to be moved. There again is 2 types of pins, a relative and an absolute pin. So the first example is going to be a relative pin. Let me show you. If I move this rook to the square right here, I am now making it so my opponent cannot move this bishop into a safe spot, because if my opponent moves the bishop, I can grab the queen. So the thing that is stopping my opponent's bishop from moving is that there's a more valuable piece behind it. Here, I'll show you an absolute fork. An absolute fork, in this scenario here, my opponent could still move his bishop, but it would just not be very, very smart of him. Here, my opponent, after I move the bishop into this here, my opponent cannot move this rook, because if he moves his rook, it is a check, and my opponent cannot do that. So this is called an absolute pin, because my opponent has no way of moving this to safety and has to allow me to take it. Finally, I'll show you another absolute pin. If I move my rook into this square right here, I am pinning this knight right here from moving. This knight cannot move to any square because doing so would allow me to then kill the king. Let's move on to the final tactic. Tactic is a discovery attack. This is when you move one of your pieces, and by doing that, you therefore allow for one other piece to make an attack. I'll show you one example of this. If you move this pawn up here, then you are now allowing this bishop to attack this queen. Additionally, by moving the pawn up, you are attacking this bishop, which means that if black moves his queen to safety, for example here, then you can capture the bishop. This can be a very deadly tactic. Thank you guys for watching this video. Leave in the comments if you guys want me to review all the other tactics. Thank you, and I hope you learned something.